After research and study, the drones that were flying over New Jersey in large numbers were authorized to be flown by the FAA for research and various other reasons. Many of these drones were also hobbyists, recreational, and private individuals that enjoy flying drones. In time, it got worse due to curiosity. This was not the enemy. A statement from the President of the United States to start this briefing with some news. And with that, I will turn it over to questions.
What a joke. The Trump administration has just told us that the drones are literally just drones, and they're all been approved by the FAA for research. This is not good enough. And, you know, guys, today's video started about this announcement, but it has developed and transformed into something much more. And it all kind of weaves together, and it actually sets us up for a video that I was working on tomorrow. So you can kind of look at this as like a part 1 and a part 2. Now, first of all, I'll address the obvious. I've obviously been quite openly positive about Trump, right? And I hope, and I still do hope, that he does the right things regarding transparency and disclosure. But this is a terrible start, and I will call that out. You know, if something deserves credit, I don't care who you are, I'll call it out. And if someone that I like and support does something terrible, I'll call it out. I'm not married to Donald Trump, okay? I'm not a Republican. I don't associate with myself with any imaginary political label, okay? That they are literally by design divide us, and I'm not about that. The only label I have is me. I'm Josh, and sometimes Josh Stradamus, and he may have popped up again. We're going to be looking at that later. But look, the only thing I stand for in the political world is truth and transparency, and whoever is in charge will get probed and scrutinized in the exact same way if these basic things that we all deserve are not being met. Now, I believe that there is more to come of this. I would be deeply shocked if this is the last thing that we hear about the drones from this administration. I really would. Despite, I don't know if you noticed at the end of that clip, she kind of goes like, yep, they're just hobbyists. Tap, tap, tap with her papers. Like it's all done. Like, yep, next one. Like, no. We've got a few more questions here, and we're going to be getting to that. So like I said, these people, I've said this many times, these people, Trump and the whole administration, have made some big promises. They need to be held accountable for this. We can't let this be more of the same. Now, I'm annoyed by all of this. I'm sure you are too. But remember, hostility and aggression is not the way. If you start screeching like an ape and getting Dorito cheese all over your keyboard while you rage tweet calling Donald Trump a liar and that the whole world is going to burn down now because he's the president, not only would that approach result in nothing constructive, literally nobody's going to listen to you, okay? In fact, people with an IQ that is above room temperature are probably just going to mute your account because they realize that faceless accounts with cartoon display pictures preaching aggression and division are literally the source of this problem, okay? You'd probably fit in better on 4chan, actually. So go and check out one of my last videos. There's a link to 4chan in there. You'll probably find some place to fit in there. Anyway, instead, what we need to do is we need to come back in a civil manner, okay? We need to demand answers like normal human beings and have a conversation about this. So if they were FAA approved drones that were just doing research, these are the questions we want to ask. Why weren't we informed about this before it started happening if it was just regular research? Why couldn't the previous administration tell us about it? Did General Pat Ryder lie to the public and say that he didn't know what they were, or was the Major General of the Air Force not in a high enough position to be informed about research that had been approved by the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA? Why did the previous administration feel the need to instate a ban on all drones if this was FAA approved? And furthermore, when the ban was introduced, why was there minimal to no change in the amount of drones that were in the skies? The only change that we saw was the fact that the mainstream news just dropped it like a hot potato. What about Mayor Michael Melham and Representative Tim Burchett talking about things coming out of the Atlantic Ocean and shape-shifting in front of your eyes into drones? Are these people in positions of power losing their minds, or are they lying? What about when drone incursions were so bad that they closed down Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, one of, if not the most sensitive Air Force bases in the United States? Was this approved by the FAA as well? What about the reports of drones swarming Langley Air Force Base for 17 days straight? Was this another thing that was approved by the Federal Aviation Administration? These are the things we need to come back with because evidently they think we're retarded and we're not. So guys, it's all about how you word things, right? If you come back screeching, calling everyone grifters and liars, no one wants to listen to you, okay? But a conversation absolutely needs to be had here. Now, that was kind of the start of the video, but then I saw this. Shawn Ryan retweeted the clip that we just watched and said, "Thank you for the transparency." Like, mate, have a day off, give me a break. Like, look, despite all of the massive lingering questions that I just went through, Shawn Ryan, an ex-Navy SEAL and CIA operator, is just going, "Yep, thanks, boss. Job done." Now, I hate to do this to you again, but let's go. I'll just come out and say it, that there is a possibility, and I'll say why, that the Shawn Ryan show and Shawn Ryan himself, perhaps unknowingly, has been infiltrated by the CIA or counterintelligence, and that they're using him as a conduit for a psy-op to effectively reach the modern audience. Look, is this Josh Radama striking yet again? I mean, look, back then, I wasn't the only one kind of suggesting this, to be fair. I did mention it along with some other potential options that I went through in that show. But goddamn, that tweet, to me, is like a 9-inch nail in the coffin of Shawn Ryan. And that's really sad. Like, I don't want to be saying that. Honestly, I've said before in that show that I really like Shawn. He comes across like a very humble and curious, honest man. He really does. But I think there is something, I feel even stronger than I did in that clip now, that there is something sinister going on in that podcast. And this isn't the only reason why, and I'll get to more of that in a sec. But I just want to say, to be clear, that I don't think Shawn himself is intentionally being manipulative, deceptive, or has a hidden agenda. I really don't. I think it's actually much deeper and darker than that. Call it MK Ultra, Project Monarch, I don't know what it is. Something like that seems to be going on. And at this point, like with that and what we're seeing, the dots are connecting themselves here. Like, you know, this isn't me trying to weave a few things here together. This is staring us in the face, in my opinion. So if you don't know what I mean, if you don't sort of know what I'm talking about here, go and check out that episode that clip was from. It was January week 1, so not long ago. I'll chuck a link to it in the video description here. We did a huge deep dive on Shawn and what was going on at the time and how the Cybertruck bombers manifesto ended up on his show. Now, as I said, this wasn't the only reason why. So it just actually came out in the last 24 hours. This is what I mean. All of this stuff just kind of pops, and I'm weaving it all together for you guys to digest in one spot. And I get pumped up about it, even though it's kind of horrible news. But, you know, it's exciting in a way. So in the last couple of days, 24 hours, Chris Bledsoe's appearance that was on Shawn Ryan, which was filmed in September last year, has definitively now been cancelled. So it was originally set to be aired in October. Never happened. We were then told it was going to be aired in January, and we have now, in the last 24 hours, just been told that it is not happening at all. It has been cancelled. So why is this significant? Well, if you don't know who Chris is, I'll give you a very quick rundown, and we're going to look at a couple of clips as well. So first of all, Chris is the author of this book, and that's him there, UFO of God. Now, a quick rundown is he basically had, many years ago now, a profound experience where he encountered like orbs, beings, and other strange things. Specifically, a divine female energy and entity that people might refer to as Sophia, which I have recently learned about due to you, amazing people. See, we're all learning together here. We're all in this together. And I learned from you guys that Sophia is essentially the female personification of God. And that's interesting because Jake Barber described his experience very specifically about it being a feminine energy. Now, since this experience happened, Chris and his whole family have had regular and ongoing contact with these orbs, and the government and NASA specifically took a particular interest in him. and his experience. And he's essentially been working with them regularly for many, many years with the top dogs at NASA, not the ones that are in the public eye, the ones that you don't get to know about. And we do know a little bit about one because of this lady, Diana Walsh-Pasulka, and this book, American Cosmic. Now, if you're familiar with her and her book, she speaks about a man who's very high up in NASA and the strange, ritualistic, and almost like a neo-religious behaviors that surround the rockets that they launch at NASA with the NRO. Now, in this book, she uses the fake name Tyler, but since then, kind of recently, it had been revealed that this person's real name is Tim Taylor. And it's come out that Chris Bledsoe is the guy who introduced Tim Taylor to Diana. Look at this.
Who's Tim Taylor?
Tim is a ghost.
Okay.
And Tim is the guy everybody wants to know, but he won't meet anybody.
Okay.
In fact, the whole UFO world is dying to meet this guy, including half the government, but he's a ghost. And basically...
So you're going to connect us?
He can't, he yeah, we could, I just got that. But I introduced him to Diana Pasulka. Diana wrote in her book about him going, doing to the Vatican with him.
Okay.
But he is better known as the Dragon at NASA. His console where he works the launches is called Dragon Console, so he's in charge, right? He's National Reconnaissance Office, which is NASA, Air Force, CIA, and more. He has a whole group of dog tags like this thick around his neck, and they just peel them off. Once there's Area 51, there's Camp David. He can walk in anywhere he wants to.
Mm-hmm.
He runs the launches.
Okay.
There you go. Chris is saying that this Tim Taylor guy is like the top dog when it comes to the NRO. He's like the dragon operator, okay? And he says, and I didn't know this until I saw this clip, but he says the NRO is made up of the Air Force, NASA, and the CIA. And he even says there's more as well. But those three are like three of the most suspect players in the cover-up of the UAP phenomenon. They make up the NRO. And the NRO is the organization that these badges are from. And we looked at these the other week, right? You guys remember these? The people responsible for these badges depicting ancient Egyptian gods, reptiles, men in black, pyramids, Illuminati symbolism were heavily interested in Chris Bledsoe and his experience, and they wanted to have him around them. Chris was involved with the guys running these things purely due to the fact that he had this divine experience that he had and was ongoing. So he developed this connection with these orbs and these spirits that he wrote about in his book. And only up until just recently, Chris was working alongside them. But he is now pulled away. He doesn't want to be associated with them anymore. And I'll let him explain to you why that is.
You know, animal mutilation, people missing in state parks, all that. They slowly but surely tying it into this UFO alien coming and getting people, eating us and eating our cows. That's what you're going to probably hear at some point, if they get the nerve to do it. I think that the government has a hard time with credibility anymore. Nobody wants to believe them as a whole. So they've got a hard way to go doing disclosure. They will have a hard time at it. Because nobody wants to hear the negative. Nobody wants to hear there's no such thing as God, only aliens that eat people. And they eat little girls. I've heard this in briefings, which was sick. People trying to come up with this thing to tell to the public.
This is what Ryan mentioned that the To the Stars guys said about the slitting a little girl. I can't even say this on YouTube, but that's the narrative that they were attempting to push.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
That it was going to be slanted evil or dark, so we wouldn't mess with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I took the high road and said, no, thank you. I'm not selling my soul to no one. I'm going to tell it the way I experience it. I don't go to these UFO shows and involve myself with all these other people, so I don't take on their. I want to be true to me, and for 18 years I've been a loner. studying with scientists. And I've had congressmen at my house, senators, all have seen this with me. And
so there you go. He's saying that, you know, you may have, if you've never heard of him before, that's why. It's because he's not really interested in being like part of the, you know, Lou Elizondo kind of the crew that's at the forefront of this thing, because he doesn't want that to kind of influence how he feels. And he says that the people he's was associated with were beginning to take on this like negative narrative, and that he felt as if this plan and message was being organized to be spread and slanted as evil, and that the aliens are mutilating, abducting, and hurting people, hurting little girls, and he didn't want to have any part of that, because this completely contradicts his personal experience with the phenomenon. His experience, as he documents it, has only ever been very beautiful and very positive, full of love and peace. He even claims that after being taken by these beings one time, that he was returned and the Crohn's disease that he had was completely healed. So look, that's interesting. Now, let me just pull this up quickly. So circling back to Shawn Ryan and the Shawn Ryan show. So this is the statement that came out within the last 24 hours. This comes from Ryan. So Chris's son, Ryan, also is kind of involved in this space. He's had his own experiences. I mean, the whole family has these experiences now. This involves Chris's whole family. It's not just Chris. And he has his own podcast as well, by the way. His son, Ryan, does. It's called Bledsoe Says So. So if you want to check that out, go and do so. His dad has been on there a couple of times. So this is the statement from Ryan after their finding out that their show was no longer going to be aired on the Shawn Ryan show. It says, when will Chris Bledsoe interview be aired on the Shawn Ryan show? I thought it was coming out in January 23. Answer, it will not be aired. It has been censored. When my father and I initially recorded with Shawn Ryan at his studio in Nashville, September 2024, we were told the episode would be released in 1 month, meaning sometime in October, November. When nothing aired, we asked his booker and assistant when the air date would be so that we could align our own internal plans with this episode release. The answer was January 23rd, 2025. Let's take a few steps back. We were first introduced to Shawn Ryan via a friend of mine. When the episode did not air late last year, my friend approached Shawn directly to ask about the air date, to which Shawn replied that he was uncertain it would even air at all. When asked why, Shawn mentioned he did not want to be associated with our story. In a separate note, just a couple of weeks back, a Bledsoe Says So podcast listener sent an inquiry to Vigilance Elite, Shawn's production company and brand. Our podcast listener received a message in return noting the episode is still within the pipeline and will be released. Come January 22nd, my friend approached Shawn once more to learn about when the episode will air. I know many of our listeners have also been anxiously awaiting the release of this episode. Shawn then revealed via a phone call with my friend that it will not air due to the fact that Shawn, among other things, cannot be associated with elements of our story. Now, please understand, this is not a burn against Shawn Ryan. My father and I very much enjoyed our time with Shawn Ryan and his crew in Tennessee. And we feel the same from Shawn, that he genuinely enjoyed his time with us. In person, following the recording, he even told us that the episode was amazing. We're simply sharing this note to answer your question about the release date and encourage you to put some thought into content which is intentionally shared and content which is not shared via the various platforms you are receiving information from. Shawn has every right not to air our episode, to not be associated with our message. It's his show and not by any means our property to share. But we challenge you to think about the messages which have been aired via his platform and will be aired via his platform in the future, and the content which has been censored and not given the same opportunity to reach the same audiences. We're sharing this information with you because you, as a consumer, deserve to know in full transparency we have remained honest with you. I cannot say that our family is not disappointed with this outcome. We were very excited to be given a platform to tell our story, especially with an audience the size of Shawn's. If there were elements that felt uncomfortable to share within the episode, why not splice some portions out? Our family has spent nearly 2 decades trying to share a message of love and positivity with the world, simply recounting our own personal experiences with intelligent phenomenon. In some cases, we will be given that opportunity, but in some other cases, that opportunity has not and will not be granted. However, we believe in divine timing and that our message will reach those who need it most. We're incredibly thankful to those who have uplifted our story and for the opportunities we've had to tell it. Our message is simple. We are all fractals of God. You cannot connect to the heavens by yourself, and it can and will talk back to you. Sorry, you can connect to the heavens. I really flipped his message with that mistake. It's the complete opposite. You can connect to the heavens by yourself, and it can and will talk back to you. Keep pressing on with sharing the truth. My family will. So again, Ryan states that he and his dad felt nothing negative from Shawn personally, and they mutually seem to really enjoy the conversation and each other's company. And the really impactful part of that message, which I'm sure you probably picked up on, is that he's urging people to think about the kind of messages that have been aired on Shawn Ryan, that will probably continue to be aired on Shawn Ryan, and that the kind of message Chris and his son Ryan are trying to spread, and the difference, right? Because Shawn Ryan has been, and I've talked about this, full of like CIA whistleblowers and intelligence people coming on the show and spreading these very heavily fear-based stories and narratives, right? The big one is that there are a huge amount of trained terrorists inside the United States right now, and that an attack is kind of like imminent at any moment. These are the things that are being said by multiple guests on the Shawn Ryan show. And then Chris and his son Ryan want to come on and talk about a message of, divine spiritual energy that we all have the ability to connect to. And, there's a massive positive energy out there of love and peace and joy. Censored. Get it out. We don't want people hearing that. You know what I mean? Like, I think about that. What is going on here? But remember, the Shawn Ryan show is ran by Vigilance Elite, which is Shawn's company. Okay, so Shawn did start that company, but I think we can probably assume that he doesn't run it. Okay, he's the podcast guy. He's the guy. He's not doing the admin work, right? He would have hired someone to do that. Now, I'm sure he's involved, but having that company and having these other people who he's kind of surrendering these administrative and, organizational tasks of the podcast to, he is opening up space for there to be something or someone who is compromised to be let in. Now, I'm not trying to insinuate that, but I think we should be aware of that, right? And it lines up with what I'm saying in that I don't think Shawn is a bad guy at all. I just don't get that energy from him. I mean, you can kind of get it. You look at Shawn Ryan, he just doesn't have that vibe about him. And I think, I really think there's something to that. But having those layers, as we all know, right? Having those layers and those levels of, staff in his organization, the compartmentalization, it's easier for there to be manipulation and secrecy. Now, I'm not saying there is compartmentalization in his company, but there's obviously people above and people below and levels. And the more of that you have, the easier it becomes for things to start getting a little bit weird. Okay. And as I said, I think I said this in the last show, Shawn Ryan is an ex-Navy SEAL and has a huge military audience. That is his audience, right? I mean, not just that, but a big chunk. He really speaks to military guys and ex-military guys. So if the military industrial complex wanted to gain the support of the modern generation to perhaps perform a psychological operation, they're not going to be doing it through the old crusty mainstream news, okay? That would quite literally be falling on deaf ears because the people who still watch it are so old, their hearing is gone, it may as well be on mute, okay? If they want to get the message through, it'd be through propping up a podcast with enormous reach to a diehard fan base of military enthusiasts to gain their support. That is the perfect way to do it. If anyone thinks I'm wrong, tell me in the comments. But I don't think I am. But I can't prove it. So please make your own mind up here. I'm just giving you my opinion based on the facts that are in front of all of us, okay? And you're welcome to leave an opposing opinion in the comments. In fact, I encourage it if you can think of one. But I also encourage you to do it without being a dickhead at the same time. Okay? Goes back to what we said at the start. There's two different ways you can handle things. So this gets us on to the next section of the show. You guys may have seen some interviews going around with Dr. John Blitch. Okay, he was one of the guys who was in the original Jake Barber video who supported Jake Barber's story. He has now had his own hour-long interview with Ross Coulthart and on the Matt Ford show too. Now, he is coming out with some absolutely extreme things. Like Jake Barber's story came out and it kind of, turned the dial up to maybe 3 or 4. John Blitch has came in and he has wrenched it up to 100, ripped the dial off, stomped on it, and started headbanging the wall, screaming. Okay? I'm sorry, but the shit that he is coming out with, I'm not saying he's wrong because I can't prove it, but like, I don't know if you've seen it, but he is taking things up an extreme level, okay? Okay, so initially, tomorrow's video, so like I said, this is like a 2-part thing. Tomorrow's video was initially going to be about all of these outrageous claims that John Blitch is making, because there could be a whole video on that itself. Remember, I want to say, John Blitch, he was the guy that they said is entrusted with the nuclear missiles. So he was in a position to press the button and fire the nukes at one point in time. And those people need to report when they have to take paracetamol. That's how monitored their mental state of mind is. Okay. So when we take that into consideration, and then we take into consideration the things that he is saying, I mean, I don't know. We'll be looking at it tomorrow. Okay. I'll show you all those bits, but rather than have the whole episode on that, because, you can probably find that stuff already. People are probably already talking about that. I found something in it that I haven't seen anybody talk about yet. And like, it takes us to a whole new place, a whole new rabbit hole. And if it is to be believed, what John Blitch is saying, if it's to be believed where that takes us, it is a fully outlined plan and script of the disclosure that is likely coming through these channels. And honestly, it's not pretty. It's not nice, and it will fill people with fear. Which brings us back to Chris Bledsoe and the splitting of the narrative here. One side is seemingly, there are specific channels and sides that seem to be pushing a very fear-based approach to things. And there is another side that is preaching love and peace and unity. Now remember, your mind is powerful. Wherever you decide to focus your intention is the reality that you will create. So think carefully before you subscribe to any of these ideas. Don't just follow what I say. Don't just listen to what someone else says. Try and listen to the things that align with you, and then try and listen to the things that you don't necessarily agree with. Because if you're only listening to the things that you agree with, you're in an echo chamber, and that's dangerous. You need to get the opinions of other people so you can gain a broader perspective and make an informed decision. Otherwise, you're just making a decision based on what you want to hear. And that's not an intelligent way to go about things. So that wraps up today's show, guys. Bit of a quick one. Well, actually, it was about half an hour, but that's kind of quick for me. You know, I usually like to go on for a little while. But quick one today, guys. We've got a really exciting show coming tomorrow. I want to say a quick thank you to the Polarity members, guys, for going the extra mile. Our membership's really building up quick. It's awesome. Thank you for supporting me. If you would like to do the same, by the way, it's $5 a month. You get access to extra members-only videos. You get your own members-only chat section in our Discord. And as well, you get these sick little badges next to your name. And as you can see, they upgrade. Your rank increases over time. So your badge upgrades too. The 12 and 24 month badge, you can see there, are locked until the first person hits them. And those designs are sick. I made all these myself, by the way, and I'm proud of them. That's why I'm plugging them. And I can't wait until someone hits this one, because I can't wait to show you, because these two are unique and it's going to be very fun, and I'm very excited. And guys, it's still early days too. If you get involved now, you got a pretty good chance of being the first general of Polarity. But honestly, I just appreciate you being here. I appreciate you guys watching, liking the video, getting involved in the comments, and importantly, sharing it with your friends. Because, man, there are still so many people out there who just don't know about any of this stuff. And it's coming. It's coming. We know that it's coming. We need to start telling people, because otherwise they're going to get a big reality shock. And it's going to come pretty hard and fast, I think. So be good. Be kind to each other. Touch grass. Get ready for part 2 tomorrow, where we dive into some absolutely wild claims from people who are in a place to know.